The storm had begun earlier than the mountain villagers expected, rolling in from the north with a low, rumbling growl that echoed through the forest like the warning call of some ancient beast. By nightfall, the sky was a single churning mass of iron-gray clouds, and the rain fell in relentless torrents, cold enough to numb the fingers of anyone foolish enough to be outside. Lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the forest in stark flashes of white, followed by thunder that shook the very ground. Along a narrow dirt road carving its way through the pines, a tiny wolf cub stumbled through the mud. Its fur, once fluffy and silver-white, clung to its shivering body in soaked strands. Its ears were pinned back, its tail tucked low, and each step seemed heavier than the last. The cub had been separated from its pack hours ago, chased away by a startled bear, when the wolves were trying to drag the remains of a deer into the underbrush. In the chaos, the cub had darted the wrong direction and never found its way back. Now, it was hungry, exhausted, and lost. The cub whimpered, a soft sound almost consumed by the howling wind. It took another step, slipped in the mud, and fell onto its side. For a long moment it didn't move. Only the rise and fall of its tiny ribcage showed that it was still alive. In the distance, a faint, warm light glowed through the rain. A lantern, small, flickering, and almost drowned out by the storm. Old Man Heron adjusted his grip on the wooden railing of his porch as he squinted into the darkness. He had lived at the edge of the village for nearly 50 years now, far enough from the main square that on stormy nights like this, he sometimes felt like the last person in the world. His cabin was simple, but sturdy, built long ago with timber from the same forest that surrounded it. The windows rattled with every gust of wind, and the old man's bones, too, seemed to creak in sympathy. He didn't mind the storms. In fact, a strange peace often washed over him when he heard the thunder roll across the valley. But tonight, something felt different. Something wasn't right. A sound drifted through the storm, soft but persistent, a high-pitched whimpering, carried by the wind. At first, Heron thought it might be a trick of the storm, but then he heard it again. He lit his lantern, put on his wide-brimmed hat, and stepped onto the wet porch. Leaning heavily on his cane, his joints protested, but he ignored the pain. The sound tugged at him with an urgency he couldn't explain. He followed it down the creaking steps, across the muddy clearing in front of his cabin, and toward the forest's edge. Each step sank into the earth, splashing water onto his boots. His lantern swung, casting small pools of golden light onto the ground. Then he saw it, a small gray shape curled in the mud. Heron stopped. "A wolf," he murmured. The cub lifted its head weakly, its eyes dull with exhaustion and terror. It tried to stand, but its legs shook and collapsed underneath it. The old man could see its ribs, the tremors of cold running through its body, the way it clung to its last shred of strength. He knew instantly what the villagers would say. Wolves were dangerous. Wolves were a threat to livestock, to children, to the village itself. For generations, the people of Grenshaw Valley had passed down stories warning of wolves stealing sheep, circling travelers, lurking in the shadows. If they found this cub, they would chase it off or worse. Heron took a slow breath. He should leave it, he told himself. It was nature's way. But when the cub whimpered again, something inside him twisted. Maybe it was the memory of another storm long ago, one that had taken his wife in a flash flood. Maybe it was because he, too, knew what it meant to be cold, alone, and helpless. Maybe it was simply compassion, something the villagers accused him of having too much of. Whatever the reason, Heron did something that shocked even him. He crouched down, his knees screaming in protest, and reached out his hands. "It's all right now, come here, little one." The wolf cub, too weak to resist, allowed itself to be lifted. Its tiny body was icy against his chest. Heron wrapped it in the wool scarf he had been wearing and held it close. As he turned back toward his cabin, the village whispers began. By sunrise, the storm had passed. Heron had spent most of the night warming the cub by the hearth. He dried its fur with old cloths, fed it warm goat's milk from a tin cup, and sat beside it until the shivering stopped. The cub finally fell asleep, curled on a blanket. Heron knew the villagers would find out eventually. He just hoped they would take it better than he feared. By mid-morning, he carried the cub into the village center, wrapped in his old coat. The sun was out now, and the square was busy. Merchants setting up stalls, children playing, farmers hauling produce. When the first villagers noticed Heron walking toward them, they smiled politely. But the moment they saw what he held, the square fell silent. "Is that a wolf?" one woman whispered, pulling her daughter behind her. "Heron, you've lost your mind. Get that thing out of here." Old Man Heron held up a hand. "It's just a cub. It was dying in the storm. A burly man named Feral, the blacksmith, stepped forward. A wolf grows teeth, old man. It grows up, and when it does, it'll remember where your sheep are tied. It won't be a danger, Heron said calmly. How do you know that? Because fear breeds danger. Kindness does not. There were gasps, scoffs, and mutters. Several villagers shook their heads. Others backed away, but Heron didn't argue further. He turned around and walked back toward his cabin, the cub still sleeping in his arms. The little guardian days passed. Weeks slipped by, and the wolf cub grew. Heron named him Silver, for the sheen of his fur and the brightness in his eyes. At first, Silver barely moved. He slept, ate, and slept some more. Heron stayed at his side, tending to him like a child. But soon, the cub gained strength. He followed Heron everywhere, limping at first, then trotting, and eventually bounding around the cabin with clumsy enthusiasm. Silver was intelligent, too. He learned quickly. Heron never tried to tame him like a pet, he simply treated him with gentle respect. Silver, in turn, showed no signs of aggression. He grew protective of the old man, always watching, always alert. The villagers still kept their distance. Children stared with wide eyes from behind fences. Adults crossed the street when they saw Heron and Silver walking down the path. Rumors spread stories of the old man raising a wolf for some mysterious purpose, but the wolf cub remained calm, curious, loyal. One afternoon, when Heron went to chop wood behind the cabin, Silver stood beside him, watching each swing with perked ears. When Heron paused to catch his breath, the wolf nudged the man's hand gently with his snout. "I'm getting too old for this," Heron chuckled. "But you're becoming quite the helper, aren't you?" Silver wagged his tail. Danger in the forest summer brought warmth, fresh berries, and greener trails. But it also brought danger. Reports began circulating of a large bear roaming the outskirts of the village. It had attacked a farmer's goat and left deep claw marks along a storage shed. The villagers grew anxious, locking their livestock away and carrying torches when walking near the forest. Heron heard the stories, too, but Silver seemed unbothered. He sniffed the wind often, ears twitching, tail stiff. Something was changing in the forest. Silver could sense it. One evening, Heron walked into the village to buy flour. Silver trotted beside him. The villagers watched suspiciously but said nothing. Heron purchased what he needed, nodded to the shopkeeper, and began the walk home. They were halfway to the cabin when Silver stopped. His fur bristled. His body lowered. A low growl rumbled from his throat. "What is it?" Heron whispered. Then he heard a heavy rustling in the bushes. Silver moved first. He leapt in front of Heron, hackles raised, teeth bared, a deep, fearless growl echoing through the trees. A massive bear burst from the underbrush, roaring. Heron stumbled backward, nearly dropping the sack of flour. The bear towered over both of them, its nose twitching, eyes wild with hunger. Silver did not hesitate. He lunged. The clash was a whirlwind of fur and teeth. Silver snapped at the bear's snout, dodging a powerful swipe. The bear roared, rearing up, but Silver's agility kept him just out of reach. Heron, heart pounding, scrambled up a tree root to get away, shouting for help though no one was near. Finally, torches flickered at a distance, villagers running toward the commotion. The bear, startled by the approaching lights and the fierce cub snapping at its heels, turned and lumbered back into the forest. Silver chased it to the tree line before returning to Heron's side, panting hard but unharmed. The villagers arrived just in time to witness the aftermath. They stared, in shock, in awe. The wolf that they had feared, this little creature they had wanted chased away, had saved Heron's life, perhaps more. He protected him, one villager whispered. A wolf protecting a man. No one quite knew what to say. A shift in the hearts of men news spread quickly. The next morning, everyone in Grenshaw Valley seemed to know the story. Some dismissed it as exaggeration. Others called it a miracle. And a few, just a few, began to see the wolf differently. Children grew braver and approached Heron's cabin fence to watch Silver nap in the sun. Farmers offered Heron extra goat's milk for the wolf. Even the blacksmith Feral seemed less tense, though he still kept a wary eye on Silver. Heron didn't boast. He didn't lecture. He simply lived his life, sharing quiet companionship with the wolf cub who had become more than just an animal. He was family. Silver matured quickly. By autumn, he was nearly as tall as Heron's waist. His fur grew thicker, turning a majestic blend of silver and ash. His eyes, once dull with hunger and fear, now shone bright with intelligence and loyalty. He no longer slept by the hearth. Instead, he slept outside the cabin door, keeping watch through the night. The villagers, slowly but steadily, began to trust him. The harsh winter that year arrived early and brutally. Snowstorms buried the valley, and icy winds howled like spirits through the treetops. Food grew scarce. The villagers struggled, relying on preserved vegetables, dried meats, and whatever they could hunt. Heron, older than most, felt the cold more deeply than ever. But Silver stayed close, sharing his warmth when the cabin's fire burned low. He hunted small game and brought it back to Heron, dropping rabbits or birds gently at the old man's feet. Heron always cooked the meat so they shared it, man and wolf, surviving together. When heavy snow blocked the path to the village, Silver cleared it with persistent digging. When the roof groaned under the weight of ice, he barked until Heron woke and dealt with it. When a tree fell near the cabin during a storm, Silver dragged branches away, giving Heron room to work. In those dark winter months, Heron realized something profound. Silver wasn't just loyal, he was extraordinary. The night of the fire it happened in midwinter. A lantern in one of the village barns tipped over in the night. Dry hay caught quickly, flames spreading before anyone noticed. The fire reflected off the snow like a mirror of hell, sending sparks whipping into the air. The villagers panicked, rushing to save their animals and keep the flames from spreading to nearby houses. Silver, awakened by the scent of smoke, howled. Heron's eyes shot open instantly. "What is it, Bo?" Silver tore toward the village. Heron grabbed his coat and followed as fast as he could. When they arrived, chaos reigned. The barn was engulfed, and several villagers were trying desperately to push open a jammed side door. Inside, goats bleated in terror. "Move aside," Heron shouted. But before anyone could react, Silver sprinted toward the burning structure. A shout went up. "No! Stop him!" Too late. Silver slipped inside through a broken plank near the ground. The villagers gasped. Heron's heart sank. Seconds passed. Then a minute. Smoke billowed. Flames roared. And then, one goat stumbled out through the plank opening. Then another, and another. Silver herded them, forcing each terrifying animal out of harm's way. The last goat was limping, barely able to walk. Silver nudged it gently, guiding it forward until it was safely outside. Only then did the wolf emerge. His fur was singed, his lungs heaved with smoke, but he was alive. The villagers stared in stunned silence. The danger that wolves once represented in their stories seemed suddenly small. Silver had saved their animals, had risked his life to protect their livelihood. It changed everything. A legend in the making from that night on. Silver was no longer the frightening beast at the edge of the village. He was the village guardian, the silent protector who patrolled the forest, watched over the livestock, and walked alongside Heron wherever he went. Children brought him scraps of dried meat. Farmers nodded respectfully when he passed. The blacksmith forged a small metal emblem, a silver paw print, and gave it to Heron to hang above his cabin door. "Your wolf has earned his place here," Farrell said. Heron, deeply moved, could only nod. Years went by. Silver grew into a magnificent adult wolf, strong, intelligent, and fiercely loyal. He never returned to the forest to rejoin any wolf pack. He had found his own. The bond between Heron and Silver became the heart of many stories. In Grenshaw Valley, stories of kindness, courage, and trust where none was expected. The last winter Heron grew older. His steps slowed, his hands shook, and he spent more time sitting by the hearth than wandering the forest paths. Silver sensed the change. He stayed close, rarely leaving the old man's side. One evening, as snow drifted gently outside the cabin window, Heron leaned down and rested a hand on Silver's head. "You saved me more times than I can count," Heron whispered. "And you saved this whole village, in your way. I hope you know that." Silver placed his head in Heron's lap. And there, in the quiet glow of the fire, surrounded by warmth and companionship, old man Heron passed away peacefully in his sleep. When the villagers found him the next morning, Silver lay beside the bed, unmoving but alert, guarding Heron's final rest. No one tried to move him. No one dared. They buried Heron at the top of the hill overlooking the valley. Silver walked beside the coffin all the way, head low, tail still. And after the last handful of earth was placed on the grave, the wolf lay at Heron's side and remained there for hours. The villagers gave him space. They understood. Some bonds go deeper than words. The wolf who watched over a village, Silver, lived many more years. He patrolled the borders of Grenshaw Valley, keeping predators away. He slept near Heron's grave at night. He visited the village children, now grown, who always had food waiting for him. And the villagers loved him, not as a pet, not as a wild beast, but as a guardian, a legend, a symbol of the power of compassion. When Silver grew old and gray, he returned one final time to Heron's resting place. There, beneath the same tree, where they had once sat together watching sunsets, the great wolf lay down, and never rose again. The villagers buried him beside Heron, placing a carved stone between their graves, a stone engraved with a single phrase: "Kindness tamed the wild, loyalty guarded the kind." Deep in the mountains, that carving still stands, and on stormy nights, when thunder echoes through the valley, some say they can hear a faint howl, soft, loyal, and full of memory carried on the wind.